I know you missed us. It's been too long, but we're back. Don't worry. It's Vikings and Eagles here. We're talking about power rankings. It's your favorite part of the offseason. I know it's not the draft, it's not free agency, it's not actually setting, rosters and lineups. It's what are our power rankings and where do you fall in them? Anyways, like I said, it's Vikings and RJ as pretty much always now is here as my co-host. RJ, how's life?
Oh, fantastic. I gotta keep myself occupied since I'm gonna be accumulating so many losses this year. So gotta talk about other teams.
Hey, I've been there. A lot of good teams have been there. Some of the good teams haven't, but mostly because they cheat. Anyways, we've got our 32 teams ranked. This is not something we're going to get through in one episode. So, sorry for those of you who are expecting us to be on here for the next 4 hours. That's not going to be the way that I spend my Tuesday night. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to start with, 7 or 8 teams of who we really see as the teams that don't really see themselves winning the title in 2021, but 2022 or 2023 could be their year. So starting with the builders, and then we'll kind of go up from there towards kind of the middle of the road teams, the semi contenders, and then contenders. Again, this will go over a couple of episodes, and yeah, should be good content for the next couple of weeks. RJ, anything to touch on before we jump into it?
No, let's hop right into it.
All right. Well, let's just go ahead and start where I think everyone expects us to start. The team that has no illusions, desires, or plans of competing this year. I'm speaking, of course, about the Falcons. No, I'm kidding. About the Eagles. So, RJ, you have effectively torn your team down to a point where you will be accumulating draft picks, as you mentioned, and accumulating losses so that your future will be brighter. Anything you want to say about your team before I kind of jump into it?
I think I'm just in a really good spot. With the intention of being the worst team in the league, I think I'm in a really good spot with two shining stars at quarterback or potential stars.
Well, and again, that's the interesting thing about this. And yes, I'm going to say interesting. In fact, you'll probably start a drinking game off of the number of times I say interesting. You're going to be drunk by the end of this. So, at quarterback, you've got 3 rookies: Trey Lance, Kellen Mond, and Ian Book. Running back, Josh Kelly is of particular interest. Everyone else is kind of a big old maybe. Um, Austin Hooper, Ian Thomas, and Nick Eubanks at tight end, Quentin Jefferson at D tackle. I mean, you've basically got your 3 quarterbacks, some upside shots at a couple of other positions, and then probably like 4 or 5 rental players that when injuries start piling up, you're going to flip to somebody for a second or a third, and otherwise it's going to be use my cap space to get more of those rental players, flip them for picks, and do the Viking shuffle next year as you try and draft 80 years worth of picks in 40 years worth of cap.
Exactly. With the intention of having them all be in the second round, I'd hope. But yeah, it's outside of like Austin Hooper and Josh Kelly, there's not really anything of like great interest. There are going to be a couple of players that will obviously be traded for lesser picks at some point throughout the season due to injuries and whatnot. Um, I'm not holding a lot of points at the positions that are hard to get rid of. Safety. I mean, I have more D tackles than I want, but I'm sure somebody will want Quentin Jefferson at some point. I have a tight end that's, I mean, that is the position that we've kind of pinpointed as if you want to be a playoff team or be a playoff team for more than 1 week, you want to have a better tight end. So I do have one bargaining chip to get me a couple more picks. But yeah, I think I'm in a great spot. I really like how my quarterbacks have panned out through like rookie training camps and things like that. Jameis looks like he has no grasp on that starting spot, so we may get some Ian Book at some point in the later weeks. And Kellen Mond seems like he's destined for that job.
Well, again, I think he's got to take it out of Kirk Cousins' dead cold fingers, but
Of course.
that could be a possibility.
Yeah, I don't say it as like he's going to walk in and, by week 4 they're disinterested in Cousins and, Mond just has an attitude that gets him the job. Like that's not going to happen. But I think a mediocre, like a 15th quarterback, or like quarterback 15 rating from Cousins this season may open the door for Mond to be the 2022 starter or something like that. So I have some decent shots, and if Ian Book turns out okay, I'm sure there's somebody that owns Jameis Winston or who's that other guy that plays for the Saints that should be a tight end.
Can't recall.
Huh?
I said can't recall. No, it's Taysom Hill, obviously.
Yeah. But yeah, if either of them, either of the owners of them needs a starter, then I have one that I could give to them at a certain cost.
You're a man of the people, RJ. Don't let anyone ever tell you differently.
No, I'm just trying to free up a spot for my number 1 pick next year.
That's right. All right. Like I said, outside of the overabundance of picks, there's not much more to say here. Obviously, it's pretty clear what you're trying to do and how you're trying to do it. So we'll talk about your team at length, probably in the offseason, especially as we get to the draft next year, but not a lot to talk about right now. From your perspective, who's another one of these building teams that is, in a good position, bad position, whatever for next year?
I don't know if they're necessarily the next team where they would probably be the 2022 like 102, but I think the Lions are kind of in that same boat. No starting quarterback, relatively no running backs, some okay young wide receivers, a lot of youth there, especially unproven youth. But I think it's a team that's looking to lose a little bit more than they win and just accumulate good quality picks.
Yep. No, I agree. I think that was their plan this year too. Unfortunately, I think it was the year before they had sold a lot of their future picks for a chance to make the playoffs. Did not make a lot of noise in said playoffs, and then is now paying the price as they try to go through their rebuild. But that said, yeah, it's still in teardown mode, unfortunately for them. So I won't say they're necessarily the 102, but there's definitely a lot left to do here before this team is back in the good graces of the NFC North. Which again, we're trying to be the powerhouse division here, dude. So come on, get on this.
If he didn't pick up a whole bunch of players that just happened to be hyped, especially like at the wide receiver position and tight end, I would probably say be a little bit closer to the worst team. But picking up Josh Palmer, Tutu Atwell, Jalen Darden, like all 3 of them seem to be finding a role in that offense. Amari Rodgers, same thing. I haven't heard anything about Rodgers, but it's common sense that he's probably going to carve out a role. Tommy Tremble, same thing. So they're probably going to give him more points than he necessarily wants, and that like he has a stacked linebacker core, but probably not going to be in the hunt for a playoff spot, and probably not 1 or 2 moves away from getting into the playoffs.
No, I think he's doing a very similar thing to what Pats did last year, where he's trying to build out the positions around quarterback and then go find a quarterback. Problem is, I think he might have hit the gas too hard this year, to your point, where he's going to get enough points to be at the 108 or 109, which means he's going to be out of the blue chip area. But again, I don't know. I haven't started studying the 2022 draft yet. But, maybe it's deep enough that those are still going to be good picks, or it could be one of those situations where, hey, who wants Keyshawn Vaughn?
Right. Well, I mean, ideally, it's probably going to be one of those things where he hopes to get a Mac Jones-esque quarterback, somebody that's probably going to be a starter sooner rather than later, but just fell to, 8, 9, 10th pick, at least in our draft. That's probably what he's going to be hoping for.
Yep. So it'll be interesting to see if he cycles through some of that deep linebacking core, like you said, to contenders to try and put out second and third round picks for next year. But yeah, I agree with you. I think this is a team that 2021 is not going to be their year, and they are continuing to rebuild. Maybe at one point they'll get a quarterback who is actually on an NFL roster, but I'm not gonna force my beliefs on anybody.
Yeah, I also think his situation's because he's got 6 losses. Like he starts the year with 6 losses because the other 3 teams in his division aren't hunting for playoff spots. They're probably hunting for championships.
Yep. All right. Any other thoughts here? Should we move on to the next one?
Nope, let's get another one in here.
All right. Well, this is one that you might disagree with me on. And it's going to be a surprising one considering the position they were in just, I think, 2 years ago. I want to talk about the New Orleans Saints. A couple of pieces for sure of, a starting quarterback in Derek Carr, who's well priced, Tyler Lockett, a strong defense led by, not a strong defense, but a defense led by Aaron Donald is kind of the sole premium piece. But again, this is a team that and then of course Buda Baker and Minka Fitzpatrick. So he's got a starting quarterback, a good receiver, probably a starting tight end in Dawson Knox, Aaron Donald, and then his safeties. So this is not a playoff team. This is probably going to be a bottom 10 team. Again, unlike last year's where we tried to peg, this is team 30, this is team 31, stuff like that. I'm kind of saying, okay, who are the teams that are going to quickly find themselves out of the playoffs and be trying to move their pieces they have for picks and younger players for next year? I think this is a team that's very quickly in the first 3 weeks going to say, not my year, let me see what I can do. Or, and we're all going to be bombarded with Saints trades, which again, now that we have a new Bucs owner and a couple of new other owners, our new favorite trades are Saints trades.
Yeah, they're either horrible or you get like one really good one that makes you think.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree with the outlook on this team. So when I look at this team, I just see one that was a competitor that kind of held on and was stagnant a little bit too long. And it was more just about the running backs became unemployed and kind of aged out of their productivity, and that kind of brought the rest of the team with them. Same with linebackers. Linebackers, if they're not the extreme talent that's going to play into their 30s, they usually taper off around 26, 27. And it was just a matter of this team holding on to too many valuable assets for too long, and now they're worth nothing. And you can't recoup anything from them, and your team starts to dwindle. Yeah, it's not a good team. Do they have their picks for next year, or did they already trade them off?
I'm pretty sure they do.
First is gone, so
First
that's
is
not
gone.
going to. Yeah.
Who's that lucky owner? Reports, league, future draft picks.
I know it got traded during the draft.
Steelers.
Nice. Good pickup by the Steelers.
Good for you, Pittsburgh.
Yeah, the team's not like terrible to where like they're just in a hole, but they need to sell things off. Aaron Donald is a valuable asset that would be great for a lot of other teams to use. Probably command a pretty decent like value, regardless of like cap cost and years and anything like that. Eric Armstead's probably going to be another one of those to get a decent price. Although he was involved in a trade, was it last year, for one of Saints' seconds or first or something of that nature?
I actually want to say he might have been one of the pieces that came over for his first next year.
Okay.
300 trades. New Orleans Saints.
But yeah, this is going to be this is one of those teams that I think when we talked about them last year and they were actually competing or in at least some form of a competitive spot, uh, we said that they were paper thin, and it was just, I can't even say stagnation. Just that's what happens to some like thin teams over the course of like one off season if their players are too old, or at that aging point.
So I need to go ahead and share my screen here for a second so that you can see this too. These are the two trades in question that have happened this year. So you've got the Steelers who picked up his second this year, third this year, and his first next year for Eric Armstead and Buda Baker
Hmm.
and the 410. And then the Bears who got the 119 for Kyle Van Noy, Mika Fitzpatrick, and JC Jackson. So as mentioned, he's got a remarkable looking set of safeties. But, and again, pardon the scrolling. Hopefully, I'm not making anyone nauseous with I'm trying to get down to the Saints here. Like, look, he's got two elite safeties, some good corners. And then hopefully Van Noy gets back what he's got. Like,
See, like Van Noy's good because of his contract. I don't know if his production's going to hold up. So, like, to a team that is like a linebacker away, or like just some like defensive points away from being a competitive team, I don't hate the idea of picking up somebody like undervalued like Van Noy. But this team essentially tried to rebuild defense in the offseason without any concern for a very lacking offense.
right. And if he had just held the 17th pick, he probably could have gotten even more than it. But I think he got rid of it before the draft really got going. And, and I don't wish bad for any team. Let me just say that. I don't.
The 17th pick would have been Michael Carter, and we'd be talking about this team in a very different light if they had a starting running back.
Yeah. No, again, it's yeah. That's exactly it's a great point because you add a starting running back for this team and it's a much different conversation. They're probably not a competitor, but they're probably in the wild card conversation. Just I don't know. I've said enough bad things here. Anything else you want to say about the Saints, or do you want to throw out your next team?
I mean, just look at all their transactions for the past like 2 years. Print them out, put them in front of your computer, and that's what not to do with a competitive team.
Yeah. All right. You want to talk about another team that you think is going to be joining you in the rebuild conversation and maybe the top 10 in the draft next year?
I don't know. It seems like they've been doing it for 2 years now, but Jacksonville. The Jags are very thin at a lot of positions. A lot of players that teams would probably want. They just need to go ahead and sell them off because, like, the good players that they do have aren't going to be picking up wins for them.
Yeah, no, I'm scrolling back to this to kind of jog my memory here.
Carson Wentz, Derrick Henry, DJ Chark, Quintez Cephas, and Darius Slayton, all pretty good young wide receivers. Defense is fantastic for like that, like a couple of good pillars, but like they never filled it out. Even last year, it was Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack. And that's about it. Nazir Adderley, but I don't really know how great he's going to be long term.
So I'm wondering if this team is kind of sitting there thinking, let me give it access to my 23 picks and see if I can move those, plus maybe, I don't know if he still has his 22 picks, to round the team out. Because he has Wentz as a starting quarterback. He has Derrick Henry. He's got yeah, it's one of those where I'm trying to examine can he put together a team with this?
You look at it and you go, I'd love to have all those assets, and he has all of his picks for 2022 and 2023. Mm-hmm. But it's like, I don't know if 2 firsts, 2 seconds, 2 thirds, I don't know if that's still going to be enough to like fill out the spots that they need something.
Yeah. And I mean,
like you spend a first and maybe a second to bring in like a tight end and like then a mediocre defensive end just to add depth. You use like another first for like a big name wide receiver, pair pair that second with like, I don't know, a quality safety or a quality linebacker, you're still like really lacking a second defensive end. You're still spending $16 million on defensive tackles that you don't need to. You still don't have like enough rosterable wide receivers and tight ends. Like
It's the fantasy version of this year's New York Knicks. It's a really fun team on paper. He's going to score a lot of points and be a lot of fun to follow and watch. But that team is getting knocked out of the playoffs in the first round if they make it. So that's kind of the point here. This is what the Bucks looked like 2 years ago. The Steelers may look like 3 years ago. It's, I'm sure he's trying. I'm sure, especially when you've got a $34 million quarterback and a, $10 million Derrick Henry. These aren't the easiest assets to move.
right.
But go get yourself 2 first-round picks for Joey Bosa. Go get, a future quarterback and a pick for Carson Wentz. Same with Derrick Henry. Like, go make your team as bad as RJ's. Get the 102, get a shitload of picks, and get the rebuild started.
Yep.
Because, you're either going to be, bad and rebuild, or this is kind of purgatory.
Right. And how old's Bosa? Bosa's 25. You could like do a complete strip down and kind of keep somebody like Bosa if you value him that high.
Bosa's the key to rebuild, though. Like,
yeah,
what he could haul from Bosa is probably equivalent to the 5th pick.
That's fair.
I would say. So if he moves Bosa, he gets the basis to rebuild his defense.
Right.
If he moves Wentz, Henry, and his 2 receivers, he gets the basis to rebuild his offense. So, again, I know it's easy for us to scream rebuild. We both know how hard it is to actually make the deals to rebuild. But, that seems to be the direction this team has to go.
Yep, I agree.
All right. I'm going to keep it in the AFC South. And I'm going to go with a team that is probably closer to the top of this tier than I thought he was going to be. But, I'm not even going to say more than that. It's the Colts. So, you bought Ben Roethlisberger. He's got Mike Davis. His wide receivers are kind of the 3s and 4s of their respective teams. He's got Kyle Pitts, who's looking good. And then, of course, the aforementioned and famous Derek Barnett for $32 million. This is not a long-term competitive team. It's kind of more interesting on paper than I thought they were going to be. But I think this team gets 3 games into the year, starts 2-4, and says, well, that was fun. Who wants this shit?
So I look at this team and I see that they have 6 wins in their division. I don't know where you have the Texans, but I would suggest you look at the Texans and see how bad that team has aged, where landing spots are, and how many linebackers are unemployed. Don't get me wrong, the linebackers that are free agents, one of them signed today, the other one will probably re-sign with their team, but they're all aging assets. Yep. I like the Colts a lot more than everybody would assume. So like I see Ben as like Ben's probably going to be a great, like he's going to be quarterback 13, somewhere between like 13 and 8. And he's going to be productive. I still don't like Mike Davis, but I love the idea of Mike Davis paired with his backup. Outside of that, no other running back. So I think that's like one spot that needs to improve. I may be kind of foolish, but I love Miles Boykin because I think he's the only big-bodied receiver on that team, and I think he could actually be really productive for Baltimore. It's a lot of like wide receiver 2s and wide receiver 3s that'll probably be shockingly productive for where they are. The tight ends are disgusting. Like Pitts, Hurst, Foster, the one in Denver that I'm not going to attempt to pronounce his last name. They're all legitimate, like quality tight ends. Yeah, two of them are backups, but backups with like potential fantasy points. I hate the defensive tackles, but Sue and Joseph, yeah, it's a little spendy. Putting $27 million into defensive tackle, but you're going to get production out of it. I'd like to see like one more defensive end for the Colts. But yeah, I don't hate this roster. I think they're like you said, they're probably closer to fighting for that wild card spot. I think they might be a little bit higher than that. Probably not a contending team. But like just projecting like one trade away, they're damn close to like winning their division or being the best. Probably not the best wild card because they're going to end up winning their division.
So I'm going to go. So you said 6 wins in their division. So you think they sweep the NFC South?
AFC South.
AFC South.
Yeah, I don't see the Jags picking up anything. I don't see anything from the Titans. I'd probably have the Titans here if I had to pick a team.
Yeah, me too.
They have Christian McCaffrey, and that's about it. They're the biggest like tentpole team in the league. Actually, they're not even. They're just kind of a bad team with one really good asset. Not to say that they're not competent, but yeah, I don't see the Titans doing anything this year. I don't see the Jags doing anything this year. I think the Texans are a worse version of the Saints in the fact that like they were a contending team that just completely aged out. And I think the Colts are just going to capitalize on that. They're not going to be like runaway wins where, the Colts put up 200 and the other team puts up, 95 points. But yeah, I could see the Colts squeezing out 6 wins just in the division and running away with their division.
So again, to clarify, 6 wins is sweeping the division.
Yeah.
All right. So to compare, we just talked about the Jags, who had a expensive quarterback who probably needed to get traded. A good offensive position in what he's got with Derrick Henry, a above average offensive position in his receivers, and a below average in his tight ends. Compare that to an above average tight end.
Non-existent tight end. It's a complete zero for the Jags.
Whereas, again, there is opportunity at receiver. I'll admit that. But I'd say saying the Jags and the Colts don't have comparable offenses is optimistic. Then we switch to the defense. There's not a DE1. Maybe there's a DE2.
Yeah. And D Ford?
Maybe. Then you've got a rough linebacking core, corners, and then average safeties. So this is an average defense with an average offense. This is not a playoff team, RJ. I'm sorry. No. Like, come on. No. Not a playoff team, let alone sweeping the entire division.
Well,
I will bet you they do not sweep the division.
I wouldn't take the bet on sweeping.
No shit.
Division. But I have to look at these now.
The Titans are far and away a better roster than this team. Hands down, I'm sorry.
Really?
Yes, the Texans are a better roster than this team. Not dynasty, but for this year.
Okay. I just think the defense is drastically better than the other defenses in this. I might be a little bit overzealous on his higher end things. I may think his defensive tackles and I like Barnett and Ford. I may be a little bit high on them. Yeah, I guess he probably does need work at linebacker, but I might not sweep the division, but I certainly do not like the Texans to win that division anymore.
All right. Well, again, agree to disagree, and we're going to have those every year. But I think I think this team, again, gets 3 weeks into it, sees that he's 2-4, and says, "All right, that was fun. Who wants this shit?"
I think that division is just that. Like every single team has the potential of just being 2-4.
Right, and I think there's an NFC division that's very similar to that. That doesn't really have a top end contender in the division, but has a team who's going to win the division just because they're the best of the rest.
Okay, that's fair.
All right. Anyways, perfect timing by Chris, of course, saying, "Oh, so you guys aren't going to be talking to me tonight? Guess that's a good thing." Yeah, literally as we were talking about him. So hats off to you, Chris. Hopefully you're watching and timed that perfectly. If not, well, you're just that good, I guess. So let me think. I said the Colts. You're up next in terms of picking a team to talk about.
Yep. I think I'm going to have to go with my division mate and the Cowboys.
Interesting. Go on.
Well, I know their intention isn't to be the greatest team in the world. And I don't think outside of Trevor Lawrence, I don't think they've really found some extremely valuable assets that'll just force wins on them. TJ Watt's probably good, so he probably needs to get rid of those 250 consistent 250 points. But I think this team is all really good secondary players.
So this is, similar to how we disagreed on the Colts.
Mm-hmm.
I think this team is a trade away.
Okay.
Trevor quarterback, Cam Akers at running back, with Darrell Henderson as his spell and probably going to get enough touches to be a running back 2, running back 3.
Mm-hmm.
I think Anthony Miller is going to be better than a lot of people think. I really like the pick of Dwayne Eskridge, especially in that Seattle offense. He's got Irv Smith, and again, something tells me they brought Rudolph into New York for a reason. Now, his defense needs some help. Is young. You've got Onwuzurike, which I will never pronounce correctly, so don't even ask, who I really like as a D tackle. I think with Parsons and Watt, he's got a really good start of something at linebacker. I think he's got good options at his secondary. I think if he can find a trade to bring in maybe one more receiver and one more, the end, this is a wild card team. And because of the nature of his team, it's one that will build. So he's got to find the right players. But I think, especially with you looking towards the future in this division, the Giants kind of looking towards the future, if he plays his cards right, he can get the 9 wins and be in the conversation.
Okay, I can see that. I think it's kind of like a coin flip with Giants and Cowboys. Who's going to be that other team that's just kind of I'm terrible. I'm gonna I'm gonna toss it in this year. So I was kind of just threw out Cowboys. Could be either one, Cowboys or Giants. Yeah, I don't disagree. This isn't one you're going to get a huge argument out of, because I did like a lot of the picks. I think we came out of the rookie draft, and I said that this was one of the teams that won the draft, just clearing away. Obviously, got the franchise quarterback. Got a really good X wide receiver in Eskridge. You love Levi. I wasn't huge on Levi, but I do understand that his opportunity there is going to be pretty good. And we all love the Asai and the Parsons pick. So yeah, I can see that it's not some wild prediction that they find a good value defensive end and a good wide receiver, and wide receiver. Yeah, wide receiver or running back, probably wide receiver 1. And they just find themselves in the playoffs.
So it's one of those where I'm going to throw out trade ideas as I see them, because I don't have a lot of the young assets to make some of these trades, but it's always fun to kind of make them for other people. If the Cowboys went to the Jags and said, I want Derrick Henry, I want Darius Slayton, I want Joey Bosa. Here's 2 firsts and 2 seconds next year, and maybe they have to throw a 23 pick in there also. Am I in the ballpark?
Probably a little bit more, but I don't think that's a terrible idea. I also don't think it's a awful idea to just go after like say Bosa and one or two of the wide receivers. Leave Henry alone and
Yeah.
just because like I don't know if the Cowboys wants to spend all of that to just quote unquote go all in while you have another contender in the division. Um, but yeah, it wouldn't be a bad idea to start asking a Jags like team for their valuable assets.
Right. And again, the idea is to go after the assets who you think are going to be there for a little while. So
Right.
again, I think Slayton has seen a diminished value based off some of the pieces they brought in this offseason. Henry's starting to reach that ripe old age for running backs. So so there. But Joey Bosa at 25, I mean, hopefully he's got 5 or 6 more solid NFL seasons, if not more, in him. So he's the kind of player that you add him to your team. You add, like you said, maybe a Chark or some of these other players. Although some of the comments that Urban Meyer's making about Chark, Urban Meyer in general, makes me really nervous. Um, that could make a lot of sense for him. So I'll keep popping these up as I see them. But that's definitely one where I could see the two of them working something out and making some beautiful music.
Yeah, I have them and I have another team that we haven't talked about. I actually just have them highlighted with like red. Like my initial thought was I don't think they're going to make the playoffs, but I also have like written next to them they're also in that like middle group of like if they make one or two exceptional trades, they're in the hunt for the playoffs. So they're kind of like on borderlining.
Yep. All right. I think I'm up. Um, let's see. We've talked about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Um, let's talk about at least one more team each, and then we can kind of gauge from there if we want to keep going. I've dumped on this team a lot, so I feel bad picking them to talk about here, but I'm going to anyway because they're where someone I see in this group. It's the Patriots.
Okay. We're not alone in that.
Yeah, it's a team who, frankly, came into the draft saying, I'm looking to acquire picks because this is not my year. I hope next year is. So he took a definite eye to the players he chose of guys who may not do something for him this year, but will set him up next year, which I think is the right view and a bit of a departure from last year where I think he was drafting for more of the who are the guys who can help me right now. I think I'm a QB away from making the jump and never got that quarterback. So he made a couple of trades to move away some win now assets. I think he's probably got one or two more in terms of Lombardi, Lenny, and a couple of these other guys, but good future pieces. I like Davis Mills. If things go sideways for Watson, he's going to be in a good position there. Trey Sermon, I think, is a good running back. I think he's going to take the Tevin Coleman role in San Francisco. I don't think it's going to be an immediate running back one because he's in a Shanahan offense, but I still think he's a good, not great player. Chenault and Moore, good building blocks, especially if Edwards can find his game at receiver. Adam Troutman, I love, especially with Cook out of town. I think he really takes a step forward this year. And then he's starting to build something on defense. Josh Allen at the end, Jamin Davis and Jamian Sherwood, along with Kenneth Murray at linebacker. He's just got the pieces that maybe he says, fuck it, and tries to do something this year. But if he doesn't and continues kind of moving some of these pieces that could be second round value to teams, he's going to be in a very good position next year.
Yeah, I agree. I think Leonard Fournette's probably something that you actively try to move as soon as possible. Do you think Moore is something that you hold on to or get rid of in the scenario? I mean, he's young and an exceptional player, but is he somebody that you just deal him while he's worth more than what he was picked at?
So he's a tough player for me to move right now. I'd probably hold. Okay. Last year, there was conversation of him competing for, with a good second year, the overall wide receiver one of fantasy. There are people who thought it. I'm not completely talking out of my ass. he still put up 1,200 yards receiving with 4 touchdowns. So this is not somebody who had a scrub-ass season. That said, I think the the Fantasy Shark projection for him of 90 receptions for 1,400 yards and 4 touchdowns might be a tad optimistic, but he's a wide receiver 1 in this league. And if he sees any kind of uptick from 4 touchdowns, he's going to be a top 10 wide receiver in this league. So the fact that he's got him for at least 1 more year at this price point before having to pay up, I think makes sense. Now, if somebody comes with the bag, buy Felicia.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at. Is he the type of player that's just completely unmovable, or is because of where the team is positioned, would it be unreasonable, or would it be reasonable to get rid of him? Mostly because, like, is he going to peak? Like, is this his peak in value, or is he going to get better? I think Carolina is a competent franchise that knows how to, like, put together a team. So they're not going to be resting or hoping specifically for his production. I think Robbie Anderson, and I think that they are competent enough to bring in other players. So, like, this might be peak value, and it might be the right time for Patriots to trade him, just because of the position of, like, what his team's in.
So
with that said, I don't know if anybody's actually going to pay what he's worth.
Again, throwing ideas around. Say the fake Panthers decide, hey, you know what I need? It's 1 more top receiver, and says, give me DJ Moore and Trey Sermon. I'll give you Matt Stafford, Tyler Boyd, and my first-round pick next year.
I don't know. Does Matt Stafford take that team to being, I don't want to say a contender, but does it bring the Patriots within a shot of the playoffs to where, like, they would actually make that deal?
I
don't think you trade for an aging quarterback if you don't have the outlook of competing in the next year or two.
So the reason I throw that idea out there is because Stafford projects to have a safety value in LA over the next probably 2 or 3 years at a minimum.
Right.
So in that deal, he's moving Sermon as a running back and Moore as a peak value receiver, getting a lesser receiver back in Boyd and a starting quarterback, as well as the Panthers' first-round pick, which I think he has, but I'm not 100% sure. I need to double-check that. So you're kind of getting a hedge asset there, because realistically, the way his team is set up right now, he's not going to be in the Spencer Rattler, the Sam Howell, or whoever the third quarterback who comes out of nowhere conversation. He's just not going to be in the conversation for that quarterback next year. So again, he's going to be in the Mac Jones level conversation. And is that enough with this team? Or does he say, you know what? I'm going to take the 2 firsts I already have. I think he has at least 2. Add a third to it. And then if I need to next year, put the 3 of those together and go get myself Sam Howell if I need him.
Right.
And with Sam Bradford. So if I take those 3 firsts with Sam Bradford, hell, I got Rattler if I want it. Like
Stafford, not Bradford.
Stafford. But that's what I mean. If he put Stafford with 3 first-round picks next year, you would trade out of the 101 for that probably.
Right. And so, actually looking at the Panthers draft picks, I really like what you suggested. They have the Broncos pick. Also,
so if they trade their own, hang on to the Broncos, then use their basically stream on a best ball perspective, Winston and Darnold. They add Sermon to Damian Harris and Latavius Murray. Then they have Mike Evans and DJ Moore giving them quality production there with KJ Hamler and a couple others. Again, they're probably a tight end away from being truly competitive at that point. So maybe they try and get Troutman back as part of that, which probably, makes it a no deal. But that said,
Right.
it's an interesting basis of a conversation, I would say, at least.
Well, Panthers can always come talk to me for a tight end. But yeah, even if that deal doesn't have to go down with Sermon, that's like my biggest question mark is like trading off rookie assets. Like I'd rather just have a year under their belt before I start moving them. But that's just my own personal preference.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I after looking at the Panthers picks and like looking at the Pats, I love that deal. Like minus like Sermon, but
Mhm.
still including a first round pick and Stafford in some way, shape, or form. Yeah, I love that for both of them because it also takes Patriots to the point where they're probably not going to get a quarterback pick, but they probably weren't going to get a quarterback pick anyway without trading into it. So like it gives them a quarterback, and then still like they retain a younger wide receiver with upside, and they get to start scouting for next year.
Yeah. All right. You want to do one more here?
Yep, I got one, and I think that they were hoping to hear their name. I don't know if they're completely here yet, but I know their intention is to be here. The Steelers. So Mac Jones, Matt Ryan, sweet quarterback group. Running backs almost non-existent. Wide receivers almost non-existent. Tight ends almost non-existent. Defensive tackles almost non-existent. This team looks like mine, just with a couple more players and an older quarterback.
Right. Again, he's got, as we've mentioned many a times, so I won't wax eloquent here. He's going to move some expensive players, which is not going to be an easy thing to do. But I really like what he did in the draft this year. I
Yes.
think getting Mac Jones where he did, just kind of letting the draft come to him, taking the value at 10 and just kind of hanging on to him. I like Elijah Moore where he got him. Again, I wasn't as sold on Moore coming into it, but I think the more I see, the more I learn, pun only partially intended, the more I like. I think Dylan Moses is undervalued at linebacker, but that said, this is the first step of accumulating assets here. Now it's moving the rest of your assets to add a little bit more and really start making the wild card conversation next year.
Yep. Yeah. This team. So it's weird. I love a vast majority of their picks, but everyone other than Moore, I look at it and go, that's a little early, but I still like it. Like the
Yeah.
Elijah Moore. I don't know if I would have went 125, but I've also kind of come around to him since he got drafted. Don't really know if I would have taken Deo 208, but I love the idea of having Deo. Uh, Undrafted free agent linebacker and Dylan Moses in the third round. Didn't like it, but I was one of the people that was targeting Moses later in the third, so
Mhm.
can't hate it too much.
No?
So like, yeah, I think with all the good pieces that they've picked up, it's like a good building blocks or like starting potentially good building blocks. But yeah, same. Just they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
In the sense like they're active enough to move these players that they don't want and things like that. They're not going to be halfway through the season with a couple productive players, accumulating unwanted wins.
I completely agree. And here's hoping they stay on foot on the gas to keep trying to move some of these things. All right. Should we do one more each, or are you ready to call it after these 8?
Yeah, I'm cool with doing one more each.
Okay.
I think we've completely exhausted all of my terrible teams, though.
I've got 2 more.
Okay.
That said, I'll talk about one. We'll see if you get the other one, or if you go into kind of my next tier here. I'm coming back to the NFC South, and we're going to talk about the Buccaneers.
Okay. This is actually one that I was that wanted to talk about. I don't think we've talked about any other ones, but there are some teams that when I offered to break down their teams and discuss them in depth. A couple teams did reach out. Bucks is one of them. So I do look forward to kind of diving into this team and talking it out with somebody else.
So again, I think this is going to be a really fun team to break apart this year. So to put it in perspective, you've got 3 probably backup quarterbacks, but if things break right, probably you could have up to 2, maybe 3 starters at quarterback. Michael Carter, we talked about a little bit, I think was the winner of the NFL draft, and at 117, he could be a lead running back here. And that said, Drake and Cohen and Gallman are in complementary positions that they're going to be useful players this year. T. Higgins, Amari Cooper, Damian Bird, Brashard Perriman, like the receivers aren't terrible. They're not, except for Higgins and Cooper jumping off the page. Again, there's a lot about this team that's, the first look at it, it's like, okay, this team's not going to compete. But this team is going to have some useful pieces. I don't know if it's going to be at the level of, okay, all those pieces work together and they find themselves in the playoffs. But I think he's going to find himself, week 4, week 5 and say, all right, I'm going to be able to drop Perriman and, and Drake for a first. Or I'm flipping T. Higgins for a first and a second or things like that. Again, I wouldn't necessarily make that kind of deal like converting guys on rookie contracts who are playing really well like Higgins. But again, I think Higgins' name took a hit with Jamar Chase. So, he's going to hold, make sure he gets the right value and then flip him. But he's got the pieces that if he makes one more rotation on this, he's going to have quite a formidable team.
Yep. I think this is kind of one of those teams where you just hold until we start accumulating wins and losses. Unless somebody approaches you with a starting quarterback for a really good price before the season starts, you kind of just go into it as is. And as one of the plethora of defensive ends that haven't, broke out yet or haven't been super productive, like as they start to be productive, as Jadeveon Clowney starts to put up points in Cleveland, or like Takk McKinley finally starts to figure out how to get to the quarterback in Cleveland, like maybe trade those off for picks. But yeah, like you had basically said, I don't know if moving like T. Higgins would necessarily be on my to-do list. Amari Cooper, I could probably even hold on to Tariq Cohen just because I love his cost and him being a pass catching running back. But certainly, like if you've accumulated more losses than wins, at a certain point, cutting bait on Kenyon Drake and actually getting some picks for him would be great. Brashad Perriman is stupid undervalued contract wise, and he's probably going to be the wide receiver 1 in Detroit. So I would certainly like get rid of him once you start racking up the losses. Johnny Smith isn't like I'm a Pats fan, and I don't like view him as a huge dynasty asset, but somebody's going to want that like $8 million contract on the tight end, and somebody's going to pay a really good price for him.
Yeah.
Even like CJ Uzama, if like he comes back from his injury and he's somewhat productive. Like he had a pretty decent like goal line targets before he got injured, and I had a decent rapport with Burrow. So like those all could be, I don't want to call them like first and second round picks, but some of them could be paired together to get a later first, or what would be assumed as a later first, and just still have a great team of like Michael Carter, Tariq Cohen, T. Higgins just waiting for 2022.
Yeah, and again, this is one of those teams that when I looked at it, it's okay. Obviously, this is not a team that's competing, but I look at every single player on this team, and I think, okay,
they aren't players that you could just send to free agency and
right.
Like there wouldn't be a scramble for them. Like literally, the worst players on their team, you could cut and somebody would claim them within an hour.
I'd say there's maybe 1 or 2 that wouldn't, but yeah, for the most part, yeah I agree completely. it's all three of those quarterbacks would be coveted. All four of those running backs would be coveted.
Right.
Every receiver there, even with the Julio trade, someone's going to come after Josh Reynolds. John, who I think is going to play kind of an H-back role in that offense, so he doesn't necessarily have a starting tight end there. That said, I mean, that's a productive role, and that's an $8 million contract when tight ends are going for $22 million or so.
Right. I also think that this team isn't like, it wouldn't be unfounded for this team to get out of some of the double headers and go, maybe I should be the team that's like trying to compete, in the sense that maybe take T. Higgins and break him down into a slightly worse off wide receiver and another, valuable safety, or like another depth running back. Ideally, you probably don't want to do that, but like, this isn't one of those teams where they're just so terrible that I can't see them, picking up some wins that they shouldn't.
Right. All right. So who do you have as your 10th and last team here?
Seahawks. I do feel that they are in a weak division. I think they're also in the same scenario as Bucks.
Yeah.
Where like they could just find a couple of like wins inside their division that they didn't necessarily expect to get, and they're not two trades away, but they're, if they could pull off two exceptional trades, that they could probably find themselves in, a wild card, maybe somehow sneaking out a division, something like that. But currently, like their current standing, I don't expect them to really be in the hunt.
So again, yeah, I think the Rams are probably the favorite in the West.
I agree.
That said, the rest of the teams for me are just in a blob.
Yeah.
So I think the Seahawks has one of the better offenses in the NFC West. The defense leaves a lot to be desired. But again, what would I rather have to build through free agency trades and things like that versus, have solid? I'd rather have to try and build my defense that way rather than my offense.
Exactly. You can buy a lot of really valuable defensive assets for a first and a second. I mean, look at those Saints transactions that you pulled up, and they only moved a first and 2 twos.
So the Seahawks have Zach Wilson, Terrace Marshall, Pat Freiermuth as I think their first 3 picks this year.
Mm-hmm.
That joins CEH and Chase Edmonds. That's an offense that can get you some places.
Yep.
Not going to win you a title. It's something to build around for sure, though.
Mm-hmm.
The defense, though, the front four is just abysmal.
Yes.
Maybe the front 7 is just not where you need it to be.
Yeah.
That said, move Chase Edmonds to somebody who's looking for another running back. Move Deontay Johnson. Maybe he's another one of the guys you can move it kind of top of the value to downgrade at receiver and move something else. Like, again, a lot of people love Juju. A lot of people love Deontay. A lot of people love Chase Claypool. Some people like James Washington. It's 4 fucking receivers. Not all of them are going to be able to maintain wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2 value.
Right.
But Juju and Deontay and Claypool are all asking that value. So it's kind of like the Bucks every year. Like, sorry, but somebody's not going to make it because that's just not possible.
Right.
If that happens, then I agree with you. Colts is going to run away with the AFC South because Ben Roethlisberger will be throwing for 6,000 yards and 50 touchdowns. Like, he'll be putting up a Peyton Manning kind of year to support those guys at those levels. So it's either you believe Ben Roethlisberger finds the fountain of youth and throws for 6,000 yards and 50 touchdowns, or one of these guys is going to disappoint. So, frankly, I wouldn't mind getting out of the market.
Yep, I completely agree. That was one of the reasons why I sold. I don't want to say sold low, but got rid of James Washington. Obviously, like, I was looking to move assets as it was, but when I acquired him, I thought he was drastically more valuable than what I got for him, because when you look at that Pittsburgh depth chart, and you go, oh, he's going to be the best wide receiver in the NFL to get like 450 yards this season, just because of how much more talent's around him.
Mhm.
You're like, it's shocking.
All right. That's 10 teams to start with. Leaves us 22 for the next couple of discussions. I think a couple of teams are probably surprised I didn't hear their name called during this. Maybe a few are surprised that they came up in the discussion, but that's part of the fun. You agree, you disagree, you use this as bulletin board material. That's hopefully good content for everybody, and hopefully it was all enjoyed. So, as always, thank you all for joining us. RJ, super insightful and fantastic commentary as always. Any parting thoughts?
No. Until next time. So I hope some people make some trades, make some moves, try to move up the power rankings. If we talked about you on this episode, it's not unfounded that we could talk about you again if you improve your team.
Very true. So make some trades, and did I mention make some trades? But you should probably make some trades.
Yep.
All right. Hope you guys enjoyed. We'll talk to you guys soon.